Hello everyone, what comes to your mind when you hear the words tech giants? Perhaps you think of Google, Microsoft, or Apple. These are all very big companies that dominate their markets. But there is one more tech company that really deserves to be recognized for being just as powerful in its market as the ones mentioned before, and it isn't an American company. SAP is currently the world's third largest software company by revenue, behind only to Microsoft and Oracle. And in 2020, it was the seventh largest European company by market capitalization. Sometimes forgotten by the tech world, SAP dominates the enterprise application market. 99 of the 100 largest companies in the world use SAP software to buy, sell, and manage their operations. And more importantly, we are going to find out how Xerox and IBM played a key role in the founding of the company. Without them, the history would be very different. During the 60s, the American computer market was dominated by IBM. The company had just released the IBM 360, precursor of the personal computer and one of the most successful computers in history. Despite its dominance, there were many other players in the market, and one of them was Scientific Data Systems, or SDS for short. SDS was a small computer company founded in 1961 by Max Palevsky. Max had served in the US Army during the Second World War, and afterwards he worked for a few computer and defense companies. He noticed an untouched niche in the computer market, and therefore SDS specialized in building computers tailored for processing scientific computational for avionics, missile, and space applications. What made SDS to differentiate from the competition was its real-time sharing and data processing capabilities, which positioned SDS as a key supplier for the defense companies, the military, and universities. Its computers were widely used by NASA and the military in the Apollo program and for tracking missile and space launches. The SDS Sigma 7 was also the first computer to send remotely a message to another computer. The message was sent from Los Angeles to San Francisco, and this project would later give rise to the Internet. The specialty of its application allowed SDS to reach success and profitability very quickly. In 1969, 8 years after its founding, SDS had already sales of over $100 million and income of $10 million. The same dominant position IBM had in the computer hardware market, Xerox had in the photocopier market. The company introduced a series of innovations and products over the 60s that led to a virtual monopoly of the copier business and record profits. Then, in 1969, Xerox bought SDS for $930 million, a price much higher than its market valuation. That was the first step for Xerox to enter the computer business and compete with IBM and the IBM 360. They intended to use their dominant position in the printer segment as a leverage to enter the computer business.
The California Business and Transportation Agency is using computers to keep traffic moving and to keep minor incidents from becoming major accidents. For some motorists, these Xerox computers mean they'll get home on time. For others, it means they'll get home. Whether you're in education, medicine, science, industry, or traffic, Xerox computers are in the business of making your business run smoother.
Right after the acquisition, Xerox pivoted SDS away from its niche to the general purpose market, competing head-on with IBM. Lack of technical and business knowledge made their attempt to fail miserably. Their product came to market too immature, too early. It just couldn't compete with IBM. In the end, revenues fell and Xerox gave up the computer business. They sold the hardware division to Honeywell in 1975, only 6 years after its entry. And the software that made SDS successful in the first place ended up in the hands of IBM. As a deal, they did with Xerox to migrate its corporate computers to IBM systems. In the early 70s, the German branch of IBM was working on a project at the request of Imperial Chemical Industries. The company wanted to automatize the accounting process that were still done via punch cards, which was the standard way of inputting digital data into a computer at the time. For context, punch cards were pieces of paper that could hold data depending on the sequence of holes and marks that the user would make. This card would later be read by a machine that could input this information digitally into a computer. This conversion normally happened overnight, which means it would take at least a day to process this information. A side note, IBM was founded out of the punch card industry and at the time was still the world's largest supplier. Back to IBM, Dietmar Hopp and his co-worker Hasso Plattner, two IBM software engineers, suggested Imperial Chemical Industries that the task could be done much more quickly and in real time, storing the data digitally. To develop the real-time capabilities of their system, the team took the software that SDS had created for their computers as their foundation. Inside IBM though, the project had created competition and conflict across different offices. As a result, IBM decided to cancel the project. They clearly could not see the true value of what they were doing. At odds with their company and convinced of the potential of their work, Dietmar, Hasso, and three other engineers decided to do it on their own. They left IBM and founded System Analysis and Program Development, or SAP, in 1972.
We wanted to do something inside IBM, and they said, oh, we have other people who will do this, and we met them, and we said, okay, not with them, we cannot work with them, and we cannot work for them. So let us do it ourselves, so bye-bye.
After 9 months, SAP delivered their first pilot software to ICI, and not much later, in 1973, came their first commercial product, the SAP R1, where R stands for real time. The R1 was mostly offered in Germany until 1980, when the new version, the R2, was launched. The R2 also marked the expansion of the company outside Germany. The second generation of the software would also be offered in other languages, such as French, Italian, and English. But it was the release of SAP R3 and the expansion to the American market that really cemented SAP early dominance in the enterprise software. In 2011, SAP surprised the entire industry with the launch of HANA, their newest platform that was using in-memory technology. This technology allowed the storage and access of large amounts of data in seconds. The endeavor was so impressive that left many competitors staggered. Larry Ellison was one of them. From that moment on, the entire industry was playing catch-up.
Moving up and down the stack, SAP was commenting this morning that with their new in-memory database, the SAP applications, you don't really need a relational database. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that one.
Well, get me the name of their pharmacist. I mean, I know a lot about in-memory databases. In fact, we have the leading in-memory database times 10. I know Hasso's got this little R&D group in California that supposedly developed this in-memory database that is just going to change everything. Well, I don't think so. I guess we missed it and IBM missed it, and it's great that Hasso and his 5 guys got it. I mean, it's just wacko. You know, if they've been working on it for a decade or so, or a couple of decades, maybe they'd be getting close. But again, it's just so absurd that it's very hard for me to comment with a straight face.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about?
They should just keep to accounting.
One of the leading experts in the field of databases, Larry Ellison, calls this idea wacko, ridiculous, complete nonsense. He even referred to some drugs being taken, and that is on his website. How do you take that? I'm pretty sure that he reads all the publications in the field of databases, and a lot of stuff has been published recently. So, I think he knows about this, and he knows that this is coming.
SAP is currently the world's largest business software company. Their portfolio is so complete and diverse that it attracted some real unusual customers, such as the Department of Defense. At this moment, you might be thinking, do they even have a competitor? The answer is yes, but none of them seems to offer a spectrum of services as broad as SAP. A large corporation that decides to opt out of SAP would have to adopt multiple other software service providers. It doesn't mean that other companies don't have the technology or capabilities, but they lack the ecosystem to leverage their software. The sheer ecosystem that SAP has created around its software is what makes it so attractive. The story of SAP is as remarkable as many others in the tech world, but what really caught my attention is how both Xerox and IBM couldn't figure out the treasure they had and passed on the opportunity. I also found interesting researching the topic to see how different events connected. For instance, Max Palevsky, founder of SDS, is considered to be a great pioneer of the computer industry, but his endeavors are much far-reaching. The selling of SDS to Xerox made him a multi-millionaire. Later, he used part of this money to fund a startup called Integrated Electronics Corporation, currently known as Intel. And in the 70s, he even rescued the Rolling Stone, saving the magazine from bankruptcy. What did you think of this episode, guys? I'd appreciate if you leave your thoughts in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed. Cheers!